Hello and welcome to the Actual Magicians, yes I am an Actual Magicians bookshelf channel, where today in the 7th of my top 100 tarot deck series and oracle decks, I'm going to be looking at decks 61 to 70. And we're going to take a look at a number of oracle decks, and I'm going to be talking about how we go about reading oracle decks, perhaps finding their language and so forth. We do have a course on this on the Tarot Association site, but I'll be teaching some of that today as well, as we take a look at the top 100 decks 61 to 70. And again, these are all generally put together in terms of theme rather than being my favorite deck or favorite cards, because it's very difficult to do that. So whilst this may be my top 100, it's thematically broken down in terms of the sequence. So this is deck number 61, and it is the Truth Tellers deck of Arcatia. Now, Arcatia is a totally separate project, but this is a deck that is part of that. It can be read entirely independently, but it also has its place within the Arcatia project, which is part of an overall tarot creative universe where there are references to different things spread between all of the different projects that we're involved with creatively over the last decade or so. And this deck is 36 cards, and it's very vibrant, very evocative, and I'll do a sort of top-down version of this as well so that I can talk about some of the cards in detail. But this is the deck. It has a feather on the back for the truth-telling nature of it. This is the feather of Mart, the ancient Egyptian goddess of truth and measure. And there is one card that is actually the feather itself, and this is the truth-telling. So one side of the card is for truth and the other side of the card is for telling. But it's 36 cards, and you can see here we have the crown on the clouds. And for those who are aware of some of the other esoteric stuff that I have on the channel, then you might already start to see that there are some interesting correspondences within this deck. This is the crown, the gate, and this relates to the opening of Arcatia. If you take a look at www.arcatia.net, even if the gate is not open at the moment, you'll see where the gate fits into that. The rose and the key. So it's a very simple, very straightforward, very evocative truth-telling deck. It tells it exactly as it is. The beehive, and so forth. And this deck has 10 majors, 22 minor arcana, and 4 what we call relative cards. They're relative to the self and others, and the bridge here. And the interesting thing about this deck that I didn't think we've revealed in public anywhere as directly or publicly, but this deck was created when we were building Arcatia, and it was created by a relative of my co-author Tali Goodwin, and she is an artist, and she was a very young artist, and she was 14 when she drew this deck, when she painted this deck. So it has a wonderful, evocative uniqueness to it because it was created by a 14-year-old. And this is the horse, and the throne, and the bat, and the pearl, and so forth. And this has a place in the narrative of Arcatia, but it is a very, very tightly constructed oracle deck based on Kabbalistic principles, based on narrative principles, based on everything we know about reading oracle decks for real situations. So if I was to do a reading, we can do it in a quite oracular manner. So, for example, if I drew these cards, let's take a look, the dice. And because it's 36 cards, you'll notice it has a relationship to Lenormand. It is actually cross-referenced to Lenormand, Tarot, and Kabbalah, and the initiation system, and a load more other stuff built under the hood of the wonderful evocative drawings of a 14-year-old artist. So in Arcadia, this arrives is introduced about 44 days into the whole Arcadia 1 year experience, and it's part of a meeting with the fictionalized version of the artist and her mother that the hero of the story, Jack, and his dog Ben, who are embarking on a fool's journey throughout the whole of the Arcadia experience, meet. And it's in the realm of Gemantia, which relates to Gemini in the astrological signs. And so it's introduced in a way to read as pairs in an oracular manner. So, for example, if I pull these two cards, which is the dice and the well, and let me just turn those that way. I'm just looking at the screen so I can see what I'm doing here. So dice and well, what we would say in the Gemantia way of reading it, I almost said Gematria, but it's Gemini, Gemantia, is throw the dice down the well, throw the dice down the well. And that would be simply take a chance because it will grant your wish. It will turn out to be a boon to you, to be a blessing to you. The wishing well will respond if you take a chance and throw these fiery dice into the well. And it's that easy. It is a really straightforward deck to read with. And we poured in all of our experience of oracular sentence structure, oracular meaning, oracular speech into this deck. And that's why it's called the Truth Tellers deck, because it really tells it as it is. And there is a guide that comes with it, and I think I shall read you just a part of the story of Arcadia while I do a top-down video as well, so we can take a look at some of the cards as I share with you for the first time a bit of Arcadia, which is a long-form narrative. It's about 110,000 words in total, delivered over a year, with a lot of teaching in it about tarot, about the initiation system, and so forth. So here's where Jack meets Lily of the Briar. A week had passed since his sojourn at the Pools of Awakening, and their little group had made good progress across Philish. The shrine was still somewhat to the east, and a little north of that were the far fields, to where the herder was taking his flock for the season. Today, though, they were camped in one of the small enclaves that were dotted in the lands around the shrine, where those both commercial and creative made a business selling wares and oracles alike to pilgrims. This particular settlement had long occupied the ancient ruins of a castle, the jutting stone towers somewhat incongruous to the gentle dales and peaceful pools of Philish. "Old empire," muttered the herder when Jack asked. "Old wars." Jack shuddered a little, even as the herder made some habitual protective gesture with his hands and walked off, grumbling to himself. Many had made their homes in the ruins, carving out artistic and creative dwellings in the stonework and steps that were now broken apart by verdant woodland and dashing streams. Jack had been exploring a little when he and Ben, the dog, came across a set of paintings freshly created, hung along twine and in front of such a home. The dwelling was at the base of a small, old, ruined watchtower, and the paintings were flapping in the wind to the sound of small bells, which were also dangling from the twine. The paintings were bright and vibrant and strangely evocative as his gaze caught them. A gate, a rose, a key, a lighthouse, even a cat such as he had recently rescued. Further along the line he saw a labyrinth, a temple, a well. then somewhat darker, a grave, and finally a crown. Ben was making low growling noises at the flapping paintings and the bells when Jack heard a woman's voice call out from behind the line, "Lily, get yourself down here right away." He peered under the paintings and saw a woman dressed in a small smock, covered in flour, hands on her hips, looking up at the tower. He followed her stare and saw that there were stone steps up to an open door on the first floor of the building, and upon those steps shone a track of small, bright red footprints, looking as if they had been walked in scarlet blood all the way up the stonework. Suddenly a girl stepped out of the door above, wearing a similar smock to the woman, and started to make her way down the steps, looking forlorn, somewhat over-dramatically, Jack sensed immediately. "No!" cried the woman in exasperation. "Lily, oh daughter, you've got paint on your feet." And sure enough, the girl with paint all over her hands and feet was making a new set of footprints back down the stone steps as she planted each foot deliberately, one after another. The woman folded her arms and pursed her lips. In the silence could be heard Ben's growling, to which she turned and saw Jack. "Ah, our first customer of the day. Young man, would you like your very own Truth Teller's deck to serve you all your days?" And that's how we introduce the Truth Teller's deck, and it's only one little slice of the whole of the Arcadia experience that's weaving narrative and stories and so forth. And this is a good way to look at Oracle decks as a story that you are taking parts of, and as Burroughs used to do in the cut-up method, rearrange all of the parts of the story to make a new story. And in effect, that's what we're always doing with cards. So the cat and the lighthouse, for example, we might say the cat is guided by the lighthouse. The cat seeks the lighthouse, so it's a time to be solitary and cat-like, but look for something that will guide you at this time, that you can't just do it by yourself. You need a lighthouse that is warning you at the moment. And when we read these cards, particularly the Truth Teller's deck, we engage in a conversation. It is truth-telling. So we might say, where would we find this lighthouse, this guide? And then we would draw 2 cards, and let me just shuffle through them here. Let's take a look at a card that we haven't had. I tell you what, let's shuffle them and see where we would find this guide, where we find this lighthouse for us if we were asking that question. And the top 2 cards are the keys in the beehive. So we need to find somewhere that is a place where people are working together in order to accomplish something, maybe a social gathering, but social work, so like charity work or something like that. The key would be in a place where people were gathering honey for the hive, so to speak. And that might have an immediate meaning for the person. They might know exactly where that beehive is. And sure enough, you might find as well, with the literal nature of Oracle decks and Oracle cards, like the Le Normand, for example, that place might be a pub called the Beehive. It might be a place where honey is sold. It might be a place where the logo is a bee, and so forth. These cards can be very, very dramatic in their truth-telling, and it's because they've come from a place of narrative structure and were magically created in that way. So that is the Truth Teller's deck of Arcadia, and it is deck 61 in my top 100 decks in this sequence of oracular decks. And it's available at thegamecrafter.com, and it's relatively inexpensive and comes with its own guide as well. This is one of my favourite Oracle decks that I actually do use a lot. So deck 62 in our Oracle decks is the marvellous Oracle of Oz, from the magical world created by L. Frank Baum, the stories of Oz and the Wizard of Oz. And this is by Doug Thornzo, who operates as Duck Soup Productions. And this is a very small deck, but it is really wonderful. The actual style of it, all of Doug's decks are very, very imaginative, creative, very timeless, I guess, but also nostalgic. So they really do evoke a lot of senses when you're reading with them. He's really captured a sort of sense of nostalgia in the decks, but also there is structure. You'll notice the air element symbol here in this deck, the fire element up here. And this deck has keywords as well to actually help you construct. Some people find that useful, some people don't, and ignore the keywords or bridge off the image far more than anything else. You can see how these sort of montages are constructed. I love the little sort of things that look as if they are stuck on, and the sort of stamps for recycle. This is regeneration, inertia, and so forth. Now let's take a look how we might read a keyword deck as opposed to I love the illumination idea here. Obviously the cards are numbered as well. Bewilderment. And this deck is very powerful, very good for creative readings as well, when you need to really think out of the box. So let's take a look at how we might read a keyword sort of oracle deck. So again, this is the Oracle of Oz. And if I pull out 3 cards, let me just take that one, that one, and that one. We can also shuffle them as well to do a entirely random one. So here we've got sacrifice. I'm not going to show you the picture at the moment. We'll just go for manifestation and gratitude. So we have a sequence of 3 cards, and we have sacrifice, manifestation, and gratitude. So we can see that there's a relationship to the hangman here, and it's card number 12, which is the hangman in tarot, of course. So here we have sacrifice, manifestation. Look at the picture now. The storybook where characters that come out and walk with characters that come out and walk. Manifestation, they're all going down the yellow brick road. And gratitude, sort of happiness, like the other objects that have been superimposed on, like a gift bracelet, friendship bracelet. So it's like a gratitude of friendship. We can read some of the flower symbolism, the language of flowers in the flower card that's on this card. It's related to water as well. So we have water, we have earth, although it's on a red background, which is interesting. The infinity symbol, of course, for manifestation. So we would have, in order, we would have sacrifice, manifestation, and gratitude. So basically we have to give something up, maybe almost expose ourselves a bit. Look at the king there pointing up at the scarecrow. We might almost have to sacrifice being a scarecrow, in a sense that we might have to stop trying to pretend that we are something that we're not. That's the feeling I get with the scarecrow image. So I'm reading both I'm trying to make sense of the image with the word and then apply it to the reading. So we need to make a sacrifice about pretending that we're something that we're not, is the first thing that I would read from that. So I go from the word into the picture and then out to the interpretation. And then that will bring about a manifestation, but it will be something where we're moving, where we have to come out and walk. So we have to literally walk our talk. Once we've made that sacrifice, then we have to just walk as we are, as if we are the king in the king's new clothes, but we actually do know that we're naked and we're not pretending to not be naked. So we have to walk our talk, and that manifests. And then we can express gratitude, and we can come from that position of wholeness and authenticity and express gratitude. And that might be to a close friend that we perhaps recognize in some way by gifting them some recognition and gratitude. So that is a simple way of I tend to take the word into the picture and out to the situation. So I hope that the designer has been smart enough, informed enough, clever enough, intelligent enough to really, and deep enough to really evoke the keyword, that it's not just a slapped on keyword for the sake of it, and the picture only partially makes sense of it. When you can trust a deck, when you can trust the designer of a deck to have put some thought into it and have artistic integrity and esoteric ability to actually correspond words and images to interpretive possibilities, then you can trust the deck. And this is a deck I implicitly trust. I can always go from the word through the image and quite often see something totally different in the image that makes different sense of the word. And that depends on the question as well. And that's where the cards become truly multivalent and useful. And this deck, so this is the marvelous Oracle of Oz, not just any old Oracle of Oz, but the marvelous Oracle of Oz by Doug Soup Productions, Doug Thornzo. And this is how I would read, and I do read with it. Sometimes I use this for off-the-wall questions where I'm just after some totally bonkers way of sideways stepping something or looking at something for the first time, or in a totally different way, where I feel like I don't even need to ask the question because it's just a stuck situation. And this always provides me some weird way around through over the thing itself and answers the bewilderment. So let's just take a look at doing that with 3 random cards. So we take obstruction. So, and that seems very deliberate in this case. So there is a deliberate obstruction facing us. And I'm just doing this with 3 cards as an example. You can do it with 4, 6, 10. You can use a spread as well. But we are now facing that obstruction, a private property where something has been kept from us, and we're undecided as to what to do about it. In fact, we are actually looking at ourselves, taking our own head off, almost splitting our thoughts away from our physicality and getting into our own head in order to avoid the obstruction, not even face the obstruction. We've turned it back on ourselves. And as a result, what we need to do is find fortune. The TikTok man of Oz, maybe literally go onto TikTok, but there is fortune to be made. And so how would that apply? Well, I'm looking at that clip there, the safety clip, and it's almost like we need to take what fortune we have and just move forward in our own way and ignore the private property altogether. So we have an obstruction that leads to indecision, so we have to seek our own fortune and just go. I get the sense that this path here is leading away from that gate, so that the gate there is ahead of us, but we've actually just turned around and we'll take our fortune elsewhere. So the indecision can just be met by walking away from the situation that is providing us an obstacle, that there isn't a way through, around, over, or whatever, that we have to turn entirely around and go the other way. And in that we can see some of the usefulness of geography, a sort of astral, dreamlike, symbolic geography and mapping between cards, because there we were looking at the obstruction and going the opposite way, away from the gate. And a bit like dreams, oracles can sometimes be very geographic in their pointing. In terms of symbolism, the direction we're going is very, very important. And the relationship of one thing to another in place is also important. Is this thing in front of the figure? Is it behind the figure? Is it to one side? Are there lots of them? Is there just one of them? And so forth. All of this is part of the narrative mapping that we then can map to real world situations as well. And in a few of the decks in this sequence, we'll see how that geographical mapping that's inherent in the Waite-Smith Tarot, which is again one of the many reasons it's such a template deck for all other decks, is that there is a dreamlike correspondence geographically and mapping between the locations. There's a house in one that's sort of in another. There's a river that runs through several of the cards. There's a town in the background that we see glimpses of. There's a tower where we look down, and in the distance there's a bridge, and that bridge is on one of the other cards, and so forth. But they're not consistent, they're not congruent, and this is because they are an astral extrapolation of the universe that we make sense of in bits and pieces, and we string together our own narrative. And that's how oracle decks in particular work, because they are somewhat less bound by the structure of tarot with the major, minor arcana, the court cards and so forth. So we use narrative and geography mapping a lot more in reading oracle decks. So this is deck number 62, and this is the Marvelous Oracle of Oz by Doug Thornzo, Doug Soup Productions. Now, deck number 63 is part of an entire set or subset of cards, which could be literally called oracle cards or fortune cards. And these are part of the sequence of Lucky Black Cat cards, witch cards, and so forth. Gypsy cards, they're often called, but they are a sort of particular set of images that are a little bit like Lenormand, but they are often marketed and were marketed for a long time as gypsy cards or the Lucky Black Cat cards and so forth. And they're very straightforward, they're very simple, but rather than go through an entire sequence of using up 10 of my top 100 decks with all of the variations, of which there are many of them, this is one that I want to share as deck number 63 because it's one of my favorite ones to use. So this is Madame Endora's fortune cards with art by Christine Philippak. Okay, so let's take a look at Madame Endora. And again, I like this sort of world building that is done. The guy who does the Deviant Moon decks, he also builds in a lot of world building into his decks. They're part of a background story, a background narrative. And similar, when we looked at the Aliman's Tarot in a previous video, similar to that there's a story running behind the cards. And again, like the deck number 60 that we saw today with the Truth Tellers deck, then there's a whole background story woven into that as well. So here, and you'll notice these are very similar to the Psi cards in a way that we've looked at as one of my top, I think that's in my top 10 decks, the Psi cards. Incidentally, someone told me that was difficult to get hold of, but or expensive. They'd seen it on Etsy, but I'm pretty sure you can buy it from their website still. I did check that their website is available for the Psi cards, and I think you should check there first if you're interested in that deck. Just as a general rule, it's important to have a look around and make sure the deck isn't still available from the artist or designer themselves before buying it at massively inflated prices off Etsy or a copycat pirated illegal deck off one of the other sites, or getting it for a massively inflated price on Amazon or something. So we have the Dragon, Strength and Wisdom, and here we've both got a title and keywords and interpretation at the bottom. The Spirit, unseen forces watch over you. And again, this is great for doing proper oracle readings. Hindrance, fate has blocked this path for you, like we saw with the obstacle card, but here it's literally stated in words. Water, emotions are at their peak. It's an advert for another deck. Okay. So the Dagger, conflict and danger lie in wait. So let's take a look at how we might read then with Madame Indora's deck. And for example, someone has come with a question about marketing their new range of perfume, for example. And we're going to do them proper good old oracle reading. Now we can pull one card. Haha, there we go. The Satyr, revelry and indulgence. So that says to market it with and really lean into the sensuality of the perfume, the revelry, have a party, indulge people and so forth, and really evoke that. So again, a one card reading is really direct with oracle decks. So for example, we could also say, so have a party, have music there, even evoke the satyr nature of a sort of bacchanalian party within professionalism, obviously, but have revelry and indulgence at the core of it, and really lean into that with your marketing. So again, a one card reading would do for that. So for example, if we had a 3-card reading again with this deck, we have an unseen forces watch over you, but fate has blocked this path, but you are destined to succeed. So again, we can actually read them narratively. We can say there is spirit, there is hindrance, but you have a talisman. And in this case, I might even take a picture of this card for the person and send it to them in order that they have an actual talisman with you are destined to succeed, so that when they meet those hindrances, they know that an unseen force is literally watching over them because they have the talisman on their phone, or they have a printout of it and have cut it out and kept it in their pocket or something like that. So you can actually make a talisman for them as well. And reifying, manifesting, materializing, grounding and channeling oracle cards can be done in that way as well, by literally. I tend to do this with the Philosopher's Stone, again in my top 10 decks, that I will sometimes add that as an extra card to someone's tarot card reading, and then give them a picture of that as a screensaver, as the background wallpaper on their phone and so forth, in order to keep that key to the rest of the reading with them, so that they've got an anchor back to the actual forces of the reading itself as a real life talisman. So that's another way of using oracle cards, by actually giving a picture of a fundamental card to that person, like the satire picture for the person with the perfume range, that we'd actually send them a photo of that as a memory of it as well. So this is Madame Indora's fortune cards, and this is deck number 63. So deck number 64 is the Druid Animal Oracle, working with the sacred animals of the Druid tradition by Philip and Stephanie Carr-Gon. Really like Philip's work, very deep from the druidic point of view, also from the psychological point of view. And I love Bill Worthington's images, his clarity, and I also love this magnificent bird on the front here, because there's a sparrowhawk that lives in the sky above me where I live at the moment, and his name is Jeff, and this reminds me of Jeff at the moment as well. So these are 33 cards. There's a divination cloth that I tend not to use, and there's a book as well, and obviously it's based on the sacred animal tradition. And the cards are quite large. They are, oops, these out here. You have the Obod symbol on the back, the Order of Bards, Ovates and Druids, and magnificent images. It's not just any old cow, that's a proper good Highland cow, the raven, the bee that we saw in the Truth Tellers deck, a really powerful symbol used in Christian symbolism, used in Hermetic symbolism, using alchemical symbolism. There's a famous alchemical drawing of the rose that gives honey to the bees. That's Rosa Mel Apibus, I think is the Latin, the wolf and so forth, the bear. And so if you're not necessarily familiar with all of the symbolism and myths of the animal world, then the book here, in the box set at least, version of this, is really useful as well. So it has, as we saw as well, the horse that was in the Truth Tellers deck also appears in this deck, the goddess, land and travel. We have the tradition of the horse. We have a folkloric poem and the Celtic version. I wonder if it mentions Epona. Done a lot of rituals to Epona when I lived in a cottage by a stables. Yeah, there we go. The horse goddess Epona is mentioned here. And so forth. And as the gateway of birth and death, where the horse actually acts as a sort of transport between the worlds and so forth. And so it might be, well, it's interesting when we were looking at the cat in our previous reading from the Truth Tellers deck. Again, the cat is here. And it says here, in terms of the interpretation, the cat brings us the ability to observe situations quietly without judgment before making decisions. A cat may look at a king. You have the right to know and to judge important issues for yourself in your own time. Then it goes deeper into the tradition. So it actually gives a literal description of the card, and then it's interpretive, and then it extends it, and then it gives some sort of core meaning. It was Brigid's cat that ate the bacon at the end of it. So when we were looking at our magical formula in my long form video that I've done prior to this one, we looked at the four worlds and literal, symbolic, extended and secret, and you can see that this guidebook actually follows those four worlds. It gives a literal, this is a picture of a wild cat in the Scottish Highlands. In the foreground we see the yellow flowered spotted cat's-ear plant and so forth. And then it goes to its symbolic and interpretive nature. Then it extends it into the traditions of the cat from different places. And then it gives a sort of core secret meaning of the card as well. So really highly recommended. I love this deck. It's not a deck that I use as often as I would want to, I guess. But then if you have a lot of decks, then you're not going to be able to use all of them all of the time. So this is a nice one for those coming from a pagan, witchcraft, Wicca, neo-pagan, runic, Asatru, druidic in particular point of view. So a really highly recommended deck, and that's deck number 63. The Druid Animal Oracle, Bill Worthington, illustrations, Philip and Stephanie Cargon, the book and the design. Now, decks number 64 and 65 are actually by the same designer. I think they use different artists for the two decks, so that's why I'm having them as separate decks rather than lumping them all together. And also, I have two more decks in this sequence by the same author, designer as well. So I think these two people have a lot of Oracle decks out, but I do like them. I really do love them. They're not just cheap mass bestseller, sort of lowest common denominator type of decks. They're really, really nice decks, I think, at least. And it's Colette Baron Reed and deck number 64 that I've chosen as the first of the two decks. They're pretty close to each other in favouriteness, I guess, is the Enchanted Map. And this is 54 cards. I'll just show you the other one as well, which we'll come to for deck 65. And that's the Wisdom of the House of Night. And that one is 50 cards. But as I've mentioned several times in this particular video, the Enchanted Map, it has a sense of what I've been talking about, the geography of the numinous, the mundus imaginalis, the world of the imagination, the dream world, and so forth, has its own geography, and the Enchanted Map really leans into that. So let me just take these cards out here. Love the back as well. Love the artwork on the back of these cards. It's gorgeous. I love the faux gold leaf on the side here. The actual gold leaf on the cards. Commitment. So they're beautifully designed. They're beautifully constructed. The artwork is gorgeous on them. The printing is gorgeous on them. I just love these cards. And again, we can sort of imagine this in a dream sequence. It's even got the lamppost next to this building here, as if it's connected but isn't connected. And Spirit of Place, Mountain. So these are all sort of locations. Stormfields, Balancing Act, and transport between them. Gentle Gardener. But again, we can sort of imagine these in a dream. So there's symbolism as if we were wandering in a dream. And these are actually very, very good for symbolic work, for creative work, for provoking or interpreting dreams as well. I'm just trying to unstick that card there. And of course, we all have dreams of flying. I love the labyrinth at the bottom of this, a very powerful dream symbol as well, psychological symbol. And so the Enchanted Map is deck number 64, Colette Baron Reed, and the art is by, it did say somewhere, there we go, the cover art and card illustrations is, I'm not even going to try and, Maldonado, Jenna Maldonado. There's a couple of artists listed there in the cover design. So this is the Enchanted Map. Let's just do a quick one card reading. I'll pick that card because that just attracted me, is follow the leader. So we might read a little bit more into that we've got to follow our dreams, that it's time to get to the place we need to go. We need to set a schedule, we need to set a time, and it's something that will result in us having shelter. Maybe the timing is for autumn, that we need to use the best of the light that we've got available before the leaves turn, and so forth. So you can even get precise timing from a card if you read into it, and if the design is sufficiently layered and textured and nuanced for you to do that. So that's brilliant. So that is number 54, Colette Baron Reed, the Enchanted Map, followed by number 55, which is a very different sort of deck by the same author. Let's see if I can get that into focus. Yeah, it'll focus there. So by the same author, but also by PC Cast. What if you really belong to the House of the Night? this oracle provides you a way to converse with the goddess Nyx, just like Zoe Redbird. So is this based on I don't recall if it's actually based on some other series. And say I don't use this deck as much as the others. I'm not as fond of the artwork on this deck as some of the others, but I do like the sort of whole style of it, the wisdom of the House of Night. And we have the rose in there for beauty. Deceit. I seem to recall these are characters in something. Forgive my lack of knowledge about the background of this particular deck, because it's not one that I use as much as any of the others. It actually reminds me of some of the Tildwick Tarot images. And I think the reason I use this one less is because whilst it's sort of narratively linked, thematically linked and artistically linked, which if you have a mismatch of those makes it very difficult to read, and some decks do have that, particularly Oracle decks, if insufficient thought has gone into their design and use. But this has too many, for me, of a mixture of, it has things like, for example, the warrior and movement, and I guess they're fairly easy to read together. We need to be strong and make movement. We need to fight for what's right. But then we've got sort of abstract things like hope and lust, and the images are sort of a little bit too, I guess, horror romance for me. It's not particularly my genre. I was a fan of the early Anne Rice books, but not the Twilight sequence. And so, again, this one really doesn't speak to me as much, but I just love the concept of it, and the execution is really nice. Like this self-worth one here. And it's quite abstract, and it can sometimes throw a quite surprising, I guess, wisdom of the House of Night. It's one of those decks where I don't expect a lot of it, but it surprises me and gifts me every single time I've ever used it. So I guess it's one I save for maybe emergencies when it's sort of like one of those friends that you sort of don't really like talking to, but sometimes they just say exactly the right thing to you. And I guess this one is like that. So that is number 65, The Wisdom of the House of Night, matching the Enchanted Map, which was number 64, both by Colette Baron Reed and both with different artists, I believe. So decks 67 and 68 are also by the same designer with different artists, and 68 is Lana Fairchild's Kuan Yin Oracle, and 69 is Alana Fairchild's Sacred Rebels Oracle. And we'll take a look at this one first. This is my favourite of the two, so slightly in sequence of favouriteness, I guess, but again, with the top 100, these cards are not necessarily in any order of favouriteness. I'm grouping them by theme because with 100 favourite decks, one has to get one's head around it somehow. These are both published by Blue Angel, Alana Fairchild, Kuan Yin Oracle. So this is number 67. Yeah, we right? 67, 68, 69, 70. Yeah. So this is number 67. And the artwork of this is beautiful. Now, if you have a look at the side of the box and the back of the box, you can't actually see who the artist is. It's only when you get into the guidebook that comes with it, which is nice and extensive, and then take a look in the copyright section here, that we find it's by Zheng Hao, 2012, and Blue Angel Publishing. So The book has a lot of information in it about different forms of the Kuan Yin archetype, receiving blessings, a prayer for each one, and so forth. And the artwork is just astonishingly beautiful, which is why I like this deck. It's very gentle, very feminine, as one might expect from Kuan Yin. She was actually one of the first goddesses I chose outside of the ancient Egyptian, Roman and Greek pantheons as a sort of patron deity for a while to work with. And just look at the gorgeous artwork here. Again, you have to know maybe a little bit about the background of the deities and the myths that are being depicted here, but you can tell Mother Fierce is a very straightforward reading. I love this depiction of the Tao that can be spoken of. It's not the true Tao, of course. I love the nature of the cards. Weave the future golden. It's very positive, very fluid, very gentle, as I say, but also very powerful in the same way that the Tao is. The Tao is like water. It goes wherever it needs to, without obstacle or obstruction. And moon, Veil of Shadows. So again, this is I tend to use this for more devotional work more than anything. I tend not to use it as an oracle in that sense, and usually devotional work with an oracle deck, in order to evoke some of the spirit of it, I'll put a card by my bedside, look at it in the morning, and I'll sit and contemplate it in the evening for a set amount of time, usually burning relevant incense, ringing a bell at the start and end, doing a banishing ritual if that's appropriate to that particular theme or realm that the oracle deck is inhabiting itself. So this is a very gorgeous deck. So deck number 67. Drink from the Emerald Fountain with the Kuan Yin Oracle. Again, it's a Blue Angel publisher, Alana Fairchild, and with a different artist for deck number 68, also Alana Fairchild, but this one I think had the artist on the side of the box, which is Autumn Sky Morrison. You can get there we go. And this is a stunning deck dedicated to you who want to live your own unique, inspired life and share your light with the world as a sacred offering. And I just like the idea of being a sacred rebel. As Aleister Crowley said, I am one hell of a holy guru. And I just like this sort of whole concept of the sacred rebel. And we immediately go with be the hunter, not the hunted. So this is a really positive, empowering sort of deck. Collaborative dreaming. Again, one good for dream work, one good for devotional work, self-development work. And we have plenty of courses that will teach you how to use the tarot beyond just doing a tarot reading, which is just one way of using tarot cards. Faith in the process, like the carving of faith there. After the storm, I've had that card several times with things and it's brought me great relief. Inspiration. Diving for light. So this is a kick-ass sort of deck. Power of attraction. Don't know about that, but it's one again that is... I tend to use it every now and again for when I need a sort of kick of the teeth. Kick up the pants, kick in the teeth, kick up the pants, both of those things. But I think tarot decks are a little bit like having a massive group of friends who know you intimately, who know you really well, know your entire history, know who you are, what you say and what you do, and the differences between those and everything. And tarot decks even know what you have inside you that you don't even get to share with friends, lovers, relatives, and so forth. And so having a whole range of different tarot decks allows you to always talk to the right friend that you need at that particular time. And that's why I think it's perfectly normal to have lots and lots of tarot decks. It's just like having lots and lots of friends, that's all. Yeah, so there we go. That's the Sacred Rebels. So Kuan Yin Oracle by Alana Fairchild is at number 67, and the Sacred Rebels, also Alana Fairchild, at 68, both published by Blue Angel. Okay, for deck 69, we have the very abstracted soul cards, and we've been talking a little bit about using cards for contemplation and self-development work. And you might recall the Oracle of Initiation that I showed in one of the first couple of videos as part of my top 10 decks, top 20 at least. And this is somewhat similar but more abstract, the soul cards. And I do use this for contemplation, for psychological work. I've even used it on a couple of occasions with hypnotherapy work with clients who are open to using decks in their change work. So the soul cards by Deborah Koff Chapin, and this is, I think it's published by, I think it's sort of self-published, the Centre for Touch Drawing. I think in that sense it's self-published at least. I'll just take it out here. Oops. And this is Soul Cards 1. I seem to remember there was a Soul Cards 2, which that's why I've got 2 boxes. I did wonder why I had 2 boxes. I couldn't remember. And again, this shows you how to integrate the images through combined reflection, divination, silent contemplation, and so forth. There's a neat little booklet with this. It shows you how to use them for divination. And they come in a sort of fold-out thing here. And again, these are abstract, and that's why they're very good for contemplation. And because they tend to use faces and eyes, then you get a lot of self-reflection through it. Look at this. I seem to remember having that particular card for a contemplation, because it just gives me a evocative shudder when I remember this particular card. It's again, it's a gorgeous deck. Hopefully in my top 100, I've only included the best and the most gorgeous of decks. But to be honest, I mean, I could do at least a top 250. I was joking I could do a 500, but definitely a 250. And I don't think I would run out of beautiful decks. But this is definitely my top 100. The soul cards. Really great for contemplation. Very, very universal. You can use these with anyone. And say I've used these with clients on occasion for change work, and use them for myself for just trying to get to some deeper part of myself in order to respond to a particular emotive pattern that's emerging. These soul cards is a really good way to call out those patterns and hold them, try and integrate them as well. Really deep deck, really profound deck, and I love it very much. And again, like all of the decks as we've just been looking at with the other 2 pairs of Oracle decks, it's a different sort of friend than the others. This one is a very deep, profound, quiet sort of friend who you just go to just almost feel better for some reason. You're never quite sure what they say, or it's just something about them that just makes you feel better, that gives you some acceptance of what the situation is, maybe some hope that you can deal with it and so forth. And this is that sort of friend, the soul cards. Now, most of the decks that I've been talking about, I've used an awful lot over the last 40 years. More than 40 years now for some of them. And this deck I haven't used as much, but I did want to include it because it's one I'm sort of working with on the side at the moment. And this is the Retro Oracle. So this is deck number 70 in my top 100, the Retro Oracle limited edition. And this is also by Neil Lovell, the late Neil Lovell, whose Tildwick Tarot is one of my top all-time decks. And it comes with a user guide, a little user guide here, Malpertus Designs. And I think his brother still runs the site, so I think you can still get this deck, the Retro Oracle. And it's got little meanings for the cards in a very wonderful style. And I like this deck because it's a combination of playing card reading and symbology, and it's got a bit of tarot, a bit of Lenormand, a bit of all sorts of things, and it's done in a very retro style. So we're back to the fox again for the 9 of clubs. And you can see how beautiful the design is. He was such a gifted designer. So we've got the fox, the word there, and then lies up at the top, the keyword there. And look at the way the playing card is worked into the whole image. Tunnel. Mountain. Joker card. Strangely enough, upside down, of course. The alternate Joker. And so forth. So this deck has... Actually, is this Polish? I can't recall now. The Tower. The Letter. And so forth. So it's a wonderful mixture of playing cards. You recognise that from the Lenormand, the Clover card, and so forth. And again, it's not a deck that I've used a lot, unlike all of the other decks, but it is one that I'm using at the moment, and I wanted this in because I know already that it's one of my top 100 decks because of the elegance, sheer elegance, style and simplicity of the design that just talks to me. And because it's a wonderful combination of Lenormand, playing card meanings and so forth, in a really retro style by a gifted designer who unfortunately passed way too soon, then I just know I'm going to love it, and I believe it is still available if you're interested in it. It's the Retro Oracle Malpertus Design, which is the late Neil Lovell, and that is deck number 70 in my sequence. Now, I think we have in our decks 80, what will it be? It will be 71 to 80, 81 to 90, 91 to 100. We've got 3 batches of 10 left, and I'm just looking at my note there. I think we're going to do Magic, Modern Classics, whatever that may mean, and Lenormand. So I'm going to actually include Lenormand within its own section, and I'll try and do those as a top 10 within Lenormand themselves. And I might do that one next, and then do the Magic one, and then do the more modern ones that I will have of necessity used less than some of the ones from back in the day as my top 91 to 100. And then that will hopefully complete at least a top 100, a general sense of the decks that I like and ways of reading them and their uses and why it's good to have at least more than one deck in your inventory and your repertoire as an actual magician or as an actual tarot card reader, diviner, fortune teller, cartomantist, whatever you go by. So thanks a lot as ever, and as ever, the worker is hidden in the workshop. Thank you.